Here is Twitch's updated community guidelines for sexual content and content classification labels. From Angela Hessian at Twitch. We have received consistent feedback from streamers that our current policies around sexual content are confusing, and that it can be difficult to know how their content will be interpreted based on these policies. We want streamers to feel confident they understand our rules, and viewers to feel confident they will get the experience they expect. To accomplish this, we are making 2 changes effective today: streamlining our policies regarding sexual content and updating the criteria used for homepage recommendations. Streamlined sexual content policy. To be effective, policies need to be easy to understand so that a streamer knows what is allowed on the site and what is not allowed. Part of the confusion comes from the fact that there are currently 2 separate policies in the community guidelines that address sexual content. There is also an additional section in the content classification guidelines that describes when a streamer needs to label their content as including sexual themes. Going forward, the sexual suggestive content and sexual explicit content policies will be consolidated into a single sexual content policy within the community guidelines. This policy specifies the types of sexual content that are prohibited on Twitch, and violating this policy will result in account enforcement. When consolidating these 2 policies, we removed portions of the sexually suggestive content policy that closely resembled language in the content classification guidelines. The guidelines explaining that content needed a sexual theme label were not distinct enough from the language in the sexually suggestive content policy and made them difficult to follow. We launched Content Classification Labels, CCL, back in June in recognition that some content that is allowed on our service may not be suitable for all audiences. We believe that accurate content labeling is key to helping viewers get the experience they expect. And now that we can enable appropriate labeling of sexual content using CCLs, we believe that some of the restrictions in our former policies are no longer required. In addition to providing clarity, these updates will also reduce the risk of inconsistent enforcement and bring our policy more in line with the other social media services. The FAQ below provides a high-level summary of some of those changes, and you can find the full policy language, including detailed examples of prohibited content, on the Safety Center. Content recommendations for the homepage. We also recognize that not all members of the community want to see certain content, even if it is properly labeled with a content classification label. When a CCL is applied, viewers must provide explicit consent before they can start watching the stream. However, if labeled streams are shown on the Twitch homepage, viewers may still see content in stream thumbnails that makes them uncomfortable. We want to make sure the homepage, which is often the first page that viewers land on, is more aligned with the viewer expectations. To address this, we're updating the criteria used for homepage recommendations. Streams that are labeled as including drugs, intoxication, or excessive tobacco use, violent and graphic depictions, gambling, and/or sexual themes will no longer be included in homepage recommendations shelves due to the visual nature of these topics. Streams labeled as including mature-rated games and profanity will not be affected by this update unless the streamer has also selected one of the labels bolded above. Viewers can still search for or go directly to channels they follow that are streaming labeled content via the left bar of the homepage, but streams using these labels will not be surfaced in homepage recommendation shelves. Streams with these labels will still be included in category page recommendations, so viewers can navigate to the appropriate category for this content. Making this change helps ensure that viewers will not see the content they haven't consented to seeing. We will continue to explore adding more personalized viewer settings in the future. FAQ. What is changing with this new update? Some types of content that were prohibited will now be allowed on Twitch if appropriately labeled. These changes include previously prohibited but now allowed with label. Content that deliberately highlighted breasts, buttocks, or pelvic region, even when fully clothed. Streamers found it difficult to determine what was prohibited and what was allowed, and often evaluating whether or not a stream violated this portion of the policy was subjective. In addition, the former sexually suggestive content policy was out of line with industry standards and resulted in female-presenting streamers being disproportionately penalized. Fictionalized, drawn, animated, or sculpted, fully exposed female-presenting breasts and/or genitals or buttocks regardless of gender. There is a thriving artist community on Twitch, and this policy was overly punitive and did not reflect the impact of the content. Body writing on female-presenting breasts and/or buttocks regardless of gender. The Twitch attire policy already allows body art on breasts and buttocks, so this change makes these policies consistent. Erotic dances that involve disrobing or disrobing gestures, such as stripteases. Changes to popular dances. Popular dances such as twerking, grinding, and pole dancing are now allowed without a label. Previously, some dances were prohibited and others were allowed with a label. Enforcing on dances regardless of context meant our policy prohibited twerking at a wedding or taking a pole dancing exercise class, for example. The policy now takes context into consideration and only prohibits streaming inside of an adult entertainment establishment. Question: with the updates to the sexual content policy, are artistic depictions of nudity allowed? Answer: content with a focus on fictionalized, drawn, animated, or sculpted sexual body parts regardless of gender, such as doing nude figure drawing, are allowed with a sexual themes label. However, fictionalized sexual acts or masturbation remain prohibited. Question: is body painting on the breasts and buttocks allowed on Twitch? Answer: as long as attire requirements are met, body painting on the breasts and buttocks is allowed with a sexual themes label. Question: how does Twitch handle nudity in gaming? Answer: We handle nudity in games in two ways. First, games featuring nudity, pornography, sex, or sexual violence as a core focus or feature are entirely prohibited. Custom gameplay or visual modifications that include nudity or sex content, including uncensored patches, in otherwise allowed games are prohibited. Second, for games where nudity is not the core focus or feature, the mature rated games content classification label is sufficient for incidental nudity. However, the sexual themes label must be applied to gameplay that focuses on nudity. Users may not engage in simulated sexual activity or erotic roleplay with other players in online games. Games that primarily consist of user-generated content, in-game roleplay, or interactions in virtual reality are not exempt from this policy. Question: if the mature rated game that I am playing includes violence, alcohol, gambling, or sexual themes, does that mean I also need to apply the relevant content classification labels in addition to the mature rated game label? Answer: the mature rated game label covers most content that occurs within the game itself if the content isn't counted as part of regular gameplay. However, if a streamer chooses to focus their stream on an in-game content that features sexual themes, such as fictional nudity, or overlays their gameplay with comments or topics that qualify for a content classification label, they should apply all relevant labels. In-game content that features simulated sexual activities between players is prohibited. Question: will streams labeled with CCLs no longer be recommended in the left bar of the homepage under recommended channels? Answer: this update will not prevent streams from being recommended in the left bar of the homepage, as stream thumbnails are not shown in that section. Question: will labeling one of my streams with a CCL also impact the visibility of future streams? Answer: no, past streams do not impact the visibility of future streams. When your stream does not include one of the CCLs listed above, it will again be eligible to be shown on homepage recommendation shelves. Question: what happens if I do not use a content classification label? Answer: our sexual themes content classification guidelines describe